So this is Baruch. I'm back here at the Tiguan elevator Kollel, and we're going to be rising up on this elevator today, looking at the Rebbe Nachman and the concept of confession. So the basic question that I asked, and it's going to carry on here, is that since the idea of confession, which is in the notes over here, he explains that confession is something that, way back to the time of Yehuda. That confession is really a very basic part of Judaism. Now, the world that we live in now, it's where all of our most really ripe and best instincts are very much suppressed. So he says what it is the aspect of returning Malchus to its source. Now, this is what the Kabbalists call the Aliyah of Malchus to Bina. Because Bina is the world beyond, definitely the world beyond, and making them into one. Now, this concept of the source of Malchus is fire. So he says like this, bringing the fire, which is the pain of the dinim. As our sages talked, what did Nevat err? Why did he err? Because he saw fire escape from his member, that is, from his Yesod. And the Torah is called fire because it is from there that Malchus originates. Now, exactly how that works, I'm not sure, so let me go on. As it is written over here in Jeremiah, behold, my word is like fire. Malchus, dinim, and fire go together. Through me, kings rule, and the essence of Torah is the Torah scholar, as our sages taught. How foolish are those who stand up for a Torah scroll. If you've ever been in an Orthodox synagogue, you know that when the Torah scroll is brought around, everybody stands up. And yet do not stand before a rabbinical scholar. Meaning, not just any scholar. He means a scholar here. He means a tzaddik here. A person who has absorbed a tremendous amount of Torah. The Torah really remakes that person, as you see. Remakes them from the inside out. So this is every davar, everything that was used in fire must go through fire to be purged. Now this is really a pasuk in the Torah in Numbers. So davar corresponds to Malchus. So davar is the same word which means a thing, but it also means speech or speaking. Dibur, speech. So it corresponds to Malchus. That's the concept of Malchut Peh, Malchus of the mouth, which has been sunk into the realm of impurity. That is where we live here. Into the heat of the evil inclination. Whereas the Gentile world is overwhelmingly absorbed in sex. There really isn't anything else. So then when you get to be older, let's say, then what do? As in the fire of Amram. Must go through the fire. If you want to be able to purify something, it has to go through fire. It has to go through the dinim. Its rectification is by means of fire, spoken confession before a Talmid Chacham. That's what he says. Now, I think that maybe some of the aspect of this is the aspect of shame. Because it's that you don't, first of all, to find a person who really you feel is a Talmid Chacham, a really pure person. I've known at least one, and maybe many more. Not sure. And this is the connotation of Avera transgression, the Avera left letter combination, which cross over within his bones. That is the word, this is what he wants to say. We have to really look at the Hebrew a little bit. He says the word Avera, which means a sin, the same letters with just a switch from a hey to a vav, over, that it passes over B'soch Atzmoisav into his bones. Now he says something like this. The word mitzvah, however, connotes joining together. Now this word mitzvah is a hard word for me. He says it connotes joining together when a person performs bundles of commandments. He binds together the shattered fragments of his bones. So here's another idea. As is written, God safeguards all his bones, for not one of them is broken. Now remember the word atzmos. Actually in Kabbalah, atzmos means pure essence of godliness. So we could translate this as is written, God safeguards all of the essence of his godliness that appears in human beings. Not one of them is broken. It never leaves. It's always there. Now, they're going on. I'm not sure where exactly this comes from. He says the king's wrath is messenger of death, but a wise man can pacify it. So the king's wrath, the anger of the king, is really an agent of death, but a wise man can pacify it. And this is the explanation of the verse, the king's wrath is a messenger of death, for the wrath of the Holy One is on account of Malchus that has been demeaned among the nations. So I could read it, I could think about it again. He says the wrath of the king is, who is the king? The king is the king of judgment. The king here is the Dibur, perhaps the Dibur of Zeranpin. One is an account of Malchus that has been demeaned among the nations, and as a result of the fact that there is impurity, I guess, in the Malchus of Kedusha that is amongst us who carry the Malchus of Kedusha. It's been demeaned amongst the nations. We're swallowed up here. But a wise man can pacify the aspect of the Talmid Chacham, the Moshe, who will atone for the sinner. Moshe, saying like this, that the Talmid Chacham, the true beloved, understands you. He knows who you are. Maybe you don't. So when you start to say a confession before the Talmid Chacham, he already knows and appreciates what is taken for you to get to where you are. Hashem should help us all, and that's what he thinks. As it is written, the Lord forgives the transgression of the remnant of his inheritance, for the sake of the one who considers himself as remnants. This is for those people. We are remnants, those of us who are learning this. You have to look back exactly how you got to where you are. It means you're left over. You're not one of the ones that disappeared, that went this way or that way. You're where you are. We find then that when he comes before a Torah scholar, and he'll come and expresses all his letter combinations in the Talmid Chacham's presence, the Torah scholar is an aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu, Mashiach, Mashiach, Moshe as the one who saves us, the one who anointed us to bring us to Kedusha, who considers himself as remnants. This Moshe, he considers himself a remnant. As is written, the man Moshe, however, was very humble. Humble means this is the reason he is called a wise man. As is written, wisdom comes from ayin, from nothingness. Think of Rabbi Maharan in his book where he speaks about quieting the mind. Through this, the wise man has the power to appease, as it is written, but a wise man can pacify it. This is why when Moshe prayed that the sin of the golden calf be pardoned, and he said, if you would forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out. Blot me out from the book of you that you have written. In other words, I am attached to them. The true tzaddik sees the godliness in everything, and so when we come before the true tzaddik, he sees it in us. It's impossible for a person not to feel some pride when he hears himself being praised. All the more so when a great king praises and lauds the person, and somebody, a great king, lauds you, then it is certainly impossible that he would not be moved to some feelings of self-importance. However, this necessitates the negation of all one's emotions and corporeality. In other words, you're physical, you have to be able to nullify your ego completely. Then the person can hear himself being praised and not come to any pride because he's become nothing. This was the case with Moshe Rabbeinu. He saw it written in the Torah. God spoke to Moshe, and God said to Moshe, each day the Jewish people read in the Torah God's praise of Moshe. What's more, he himself related his praise to them. Yet Moshe had no feelings of haughtiness or pride from this, as is written. The man Moshe, however, was the very, very humble. And certainly by means of his humility, Moshe had the power to atone for the sin of the golden calf, as written, but a wise man shall pacify it. This was Moshe's argument. But if not, if you do not forgive their sin, you are demonstrating that I do not possess the humility needed to atone for the sin of the golden calf. So let me see this again. This was Moshe's argument. But if not, if you do not forgive their sin, he says to Hashem, you are demonstrating that I do not possess the humility needed to atone for the sin of the golden calf. Now, that really begs a question to me is what does humility really mean? It's not exactly the... Moshe, I think, just only sees Hashem, but he's an intermediary, he's like an interface between the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, standing right here on the earth with us. It's coming right through him. This is why, that's humility, he's able to nullify his ego to that extent. This is why I requested, please blot me out, so there's no purpose for me to be if I cannot transfer what you are giving and shining through to them. So if they're gone, I'm gone. So as not to be tripped up by pride. And he's thinking there should be no pride, that I could do this, I could do this. But I constantly see and hear the recounting of my name and praise in the Torah. Who could stand up to this, hearing his praise recounted, not being hardy? Because it's constantly the great thing, Moshe does this, Moshe does that, if not a very humble person. And the fact that his name appears, he doesn't care about his name. If I am humble, you must pardon their sin, as is written, the Lord forgives the transgression for the remnant, because the one who is just sees himself just as a remnant. Now the word remnant, let me see, the She'eris, he says it means a leftover. This is, that is, there was a melech in Yeshurun, indicating that Malchus had ridden to its source, as it is written, but the humble will inherit the world, the earth. Earth is Dina de Malchut, the law of government, and is written, earth rises up against them. Let me see exactly where that's going. Now, we'll come back to that in the next year. This is Baruch Fleischman, and this is the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. Likutei Maharan, the third lesson here in Likutei Maharan number 4.